Heather Bond Summers, and I am here today to introduce you to some of our candidates on the Groton Town Committee that are running for office this municipal election season. Some of our candidates are returning and some are current office holders. I have with me tonight Bruce McDermott, who's currently a member of the RTM. I have Katrina Fitzgerald, who is a board member for the Board of Education. Dean Antipas, who's a council member on Town Council, and I have Karen Morton, who's a former Town Council member and running for office this evening. I thought it was important, along with the rest of our RTC, that we give the public an opportunity to meet some of our candidates and to hear what they have to say about issues facing Groton. So we're going to open it up, and I'm going to have each candidate give their brief background and why they'd like to run for the office that they're seeking in Groton. So we're going to start with Bruce.
Thank you, Heather. My tenure on the RTM consists of 2 terms so far. Prior to that, I was chairman of the Board of Education some time ago. So I've been around the block in Groton. I've also been a mentor in the school system for many years. And I think that we should give back a little bit, so that's why I'm running again. And I represent the 6th district, which is mainly Mystic, West Mystic, part of Noank. And I'm looking forward to hopefully being reelected so that I can help perhaps keep a good cost-benefit ratio between our taxes and our services.
Thank you, Bruce. Katrina, would you like to give us a little background on yourself and why you'd like to run for the Board of Education?
Well, I've been on the board for just over a year. I was nominated to fill a spot left by a vacancy, and I always was very interested in how the board ran because it seemed very complicated. So when I took that spot, I just dug right in, and I want to run again because there's a lot more work to be done.
And it is complicated.
It's very complicated and a lot of time.
Great. And Dean, go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Very well. Well, I'm Dean Antipas. I'm currently serving on the council. I think out of the last, all told, I've been on and off. All told, I've been on about three and a half years out of the last 6 years or so on the council. And by way of background, for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm an attorney. I used to be an engineer. I've got a degree from UConn in civil engineering. I've got 3 kids in Groton Public Schools. I'm married to Amy, my wife. And I'm running again because I've got a handle on how the whole thing works now, I think. So I'm really ready to go and to make the experience that I've gained actually work. I'm out of the learning phase. I'm a little past the learning phase, you could say. So I'm with Bruce. I'm looking to make have the services provided for the for the least cost possible, the services that we all want.
Great, thank you. Karen.
Hi, I'm Karen Morton, and I recently retired from municipal government. I have 28 years of working for different municipalities in southeastern Connecticut. I have a background in human resource management, and I think that could be very useful to the council in dealing with the union environment. And I also have, I'm currently serving my 2nd term on the RTM. I've also served on the town council previously, the town retirement board, and the Board of Assessment Appeals. I would like to return to the council again because I'm very concerned about what's going on in Groton now. I think that money's becoming tighter each year. We saw our first tax increase in a while, a fairly large tax increase. And I think as someone now who's living on a fixed income like so many of our taxpayers, I think we really need to take a hard look at doing business as usual. I think we need to start making some changes, and I think we need to get a better handle on the town's priorities.
Great, well thank you for all that. One of the things that I have heard over this election cycle repeatedly, and we hear it every year, is how does the town council and the RTM, how do they work together? Many people are not even aware that we have an RTM. So I think it's really important that we explain the council, the Board of Education, and the RTM and how they all work together. So I'm going to let you all speak to that because it's very complicated, and it's important that people watching understand why we have the RTM, that people are represented and run by district, and the councils, the policy setting body. So I'm going to let you all talk to that.
Well, the RTM, representative, excuse me, representative town meeting, has elected representatives from several districts, 7 as I recall.
Yes.
And really the function of that body is to make sure that the final fiscal resolution of the budget that comes to us from the town council is gone over once again and fine-tuned, and we are just essentially the final arbiter of what happens, how we spend the money in the city and the town.
So you're really the fiduciary arm of the government.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how many, could you tell people how many people there are on the RTM?
Well, we have about 40 some odd, 45 I think. And which can be a little difficult. It's like corralling cats sometimes. But on the other hand, we do a pretty good deliberative job, I think. And we generally have a meeting once a month, which is also televised, just like the town council. And you can watch it. We have a meeting generally at the senior center. Anybody's welcome to come down and sit down and watch the meeting in person. So we have pretty much gotten down to the point where it's the budget, the final days of the budget, where we really concentrate all of our efforts. And that usually happens around March and April and May. Everything before that is kind of also ran until we get to that point.
And then I'm going to go to Dean and Karen to talk to the council's role in how they fit with the RTM. And then we'll go to Board of Ed.
Certainly. Well, in a sense, the council and the RTM are, you could say they're the glorified versions of what Groton used to have, which was a board of selectmen and an open town meeting, the way many towns in Connecticut do. The executive function has been shifted over to a hired town manager, professional town manager, leaving the town council and the RTM as essentially the legislative bodies in the town. The town manager prepares the budget, hands it off to the town council. We mull over it from, we get it in the middle of March, we mull over it in April, we pass it on to the RTM, and actually by law, because the RTM is the more numerous of the two bodies, they have the final say. All that happens at the council then is it comes to us and we set the mill rate. It's basically arithmetic at that point.
So there's been times in the past where the town council has taken significant cuts to the budget, and that has been added back in by the RTM. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the RTM is divided into different committees. One might look at public safety, one looks at Parks and Rec. Is that correct also?
Yeah, I'm on the Public Safety Committee and the Public Works Committee and liaison with the Parks Department, which is really the only fun one. But on the Public Safety Committee, for instance, Heather once proposed an idea, and I tried to help it along on the RTM, that we would just go through one public safety meeting. In other words, the town council people would meet on public safety, and the RTM people would go along with that meeting, and we'd all sit in at once and hear one time what was going on with public safety, ask our questions, etc. Now what happens is the town council has their own public safety committee, and the RTM has its own, and we just, I think, spend way too much time there, and we should just have one. However, that has not happened. Some people on the RTM really feel that it corrupts their authority if we don't have a chance to do everything over again the second time. And
Well,
what was your other part of your question? I'm sorry.
No, I was just talking about committees, and one of the reasons that we actually wanted to do that is exactly what you said. and in explaining this further, that the town
Creates
council.
efficiency.
Absolutely.
It creates
And
efficiency.
if we can't do that with our legislative bodies, it makes it difficult to try to do that in the town. But everyone hearing the same presentation at once, everyone hearing the same questions, or the questions of both bodies, so everyone's on the same page. They can deliberate separately. Nobody loses their autonomy, but you're hearing the information all at the same time, which we only think is better, because there's more information, more transparency, and you don't have this division necessarily, or this second round of the same presentation. It saves a lot of staff time, etc. And Karen, I don't know if you can speak to that also, or whatever you'd like to, as far as council and RTM and how they work together.
Oh, absolutely. I think that is a big issue with the two different bodies. And one of the other issues is the fact that so many of the groups in the RTM actually start their budget deliberations before the council has deliberated. And I know there were several times during this last budget season when, or this last budget session, when the committee for the RTM had met and made a decision and voted on a number, only to find out when the number was put on the floor that the number that was actually passed by the council was in fact much less. But because that was the number that was moved by the committee, that's what got put on the floor. So it just seems like there's too much redundancy, and it doesn't, the two sides don't come together. They don't mesh really well. And it's been my observation too that more often than not, virtually any cuts that are made by the council get restored by the RTM. And I think that in a large part is driven by, I think there are members of the RTM who are more focused on what benefits a particular district where they are, rather than necessarily the town as a whole. So their concerns, their loyalties, their decisions are based on what's best for their particular community, rather than all of the taxpayers in town. So I think that's a problem. I think there are RTM members who have been on the RTM way too long. And I think they have kind of adopted, from my perspective, an attitude that, who are we to question the departments, the town manager, on what they need for their budget. I mean, they wouldn't be asking for this much money if they needed less, or they could make do with less. And so I think that there's a lot of, in my opinion, rubber stamping that goes on. They're afraid to challenge. They don't want to make the cuts.
Well, I think that's interesting, because one would believe that when you run for RTM, you run for the Board of Ed, you're representing the children and what's best for them. When you run for the RTM and the council, you are trying to represent what's best for the citizens, the entire body of Groton, not just a particular district, but the taxpayers that are paying this bill. And we realize that money is getting tighter and tighter. We're going to probably get less aid from our state, seeing as the situation that our state is in, which is becoming more dire every day. And I think it's important that when people go to cast their vote this election cycle, they look at the people that are going to represent the entire town of Groton. Groton is a wonderful place. We're very diverse, but we need to have people in leadership positions that are thinking of the whole, not just one particular area. And Katrina, can you talk to budgeting for Board of Ed? Do you go through and have a conversation with RTM and council? And
Well, we've already submitted our capital improvement projects, and
can you explain what a capital improvement project is for people watching?
Capital improvement project is something that we need done that is outside of our budget. It comes from the town budget.
Give us an example so people will be able to.
Recently, we had to replace some tiles and do some asbestos abatement in the schools. And while a lot of people think, well, why do you have to do that if it's not broken or whatever? We want to be proactive in that because it's a safety for our issue for our kids. So big projects like that have to go to the town manager. He looks them over, and then they get put in his budget, and then they're voted item by item, the town council, and then they go to the RTM also. If they get approved, we go ahead. If they don't, they go back to the list, and hopefully the next year we can get them approved. We have CIP projects that have been on the list for
years.
10, 15 years. It's craziness. And most of them are safety. They're not, it would be nice to have, or it would look pretty. And these are things, and a lot of them are things that the state mandates we have to do.
Speaking of that, let's talk about state mandates and unfunded mandates and unfunded mandates. They're a huge impact for local government, and many people will say, well, geez, why are you doing that? Or why do you have to build a police station that has a separate jail for a juvenile versus an adult? Many things are mandated by our state legislature, and they demand that we do them as towns, and there's no funding available for them. So that is put on the taxpayers and the property tax owners of your town. And especially with Board of Ed.
Yeah.
You can speak to that, and then you all can speak to it as counselors.
Yeah. The last number I saw, we've been talking with the town council, the Board of Ed, about how to handle these unfunded mandates. In the last number that I saw, we have 55 minimum unfunded mandates, and that doesn't include the ones that just recently passed in this last session. 55. Everything from you have to have a policy about, electronic cigarettes, and you have to educate every single child in your district, regardless of their needs. So some of them are kind of silly, some of them we don't think apply, but a lot of them, they come from the right place. But they're very, very expensive, and once you get a mandate, it has to stay there because it's easy. You don't see the old mandates falling off the list. So we have to keep funding them, and even mandates that are funded aren't 100% funded. So we still have to kick in even those funded mandates. And then there's the testing. I mean, there's just a ton of them.
What are some of the new mandates that came out this year from our legislature in Hartford?
Oh gosh, you would ask me that. Well, the e-cigarette thing was one of them. You know, I mean, it's important, but it's also a common sense kind of thing. So we have to.
Does that require staff time?
That includes.
In other words, to educate the kids on the dangers of e-cigarettes. I'm assuming it's to educate them on the dangers of e-cigarettes.
Yeah.
Not the
And then there's some good ones. I mean, like there's a concussion. We have to come up with a policy for concussions. We have to talk to staff. They have to spend a lot of time researching.
Is that the head injury form that you have to send?
We
home?
have
My
to
daughter
update
had one
that.
of those today.
We have, okay, that's probably part of it.
Yeah, 'cause she hit her head on the playground.
Yeah, that takes a lot of time, staff, Board of Ed time. I mean, we have a special meeting in the policy committee, but that's a good one. That's one that we really need to look at. My son had 3 concussions in school.